First, let's get into what defines a good sentry placement. When you place a sentry, bear in mind that it is an extremely powerful tool. There's a reason it can be destroyed, because slowness 2 is detrimental to a killer when in a prolonged chase. If the killer ignores it, you can quite literally go infinite on one of the worst spots to loop in the game, this little square right here. It also forces killers to use things they'd otherwise not want to use early in chase to push you out of these areas specifically to avoid dealing with it. I'm going to use a low-level John Doe as a sacrificial lamb here to explain to you why destroying the sentry is the first thing on a killer's mind. Bear in mind, John could easily M1 the sentry and get a better chance of chasing me literally anywhere else but here. Does he do it? No, but he should have, because I won by the skin of my teeth. If you place the sentry down, you have to understand that it's most likely going to be headhunted the moment the killer sees it. It's not worth wasting tens of seconds to loop around something that cuts your speed in half. Furthermore, this doesn't mean you should place them with the intention of watching them die. If you place them far enough away from the action that they pose a threat, but are immediately in the crossfire, they can actually lure a killer away from the chase.
Oh no, a sentry! I should kill it to make the chase easier.
Meanwhile, the Builderman instant transmissions all the way over to the other side of the map by the time the sentry is dead. A killer on average has to spend at least 2 seconds to move away from chase to make it to a well-placed sentry and destroy it. In a game about time management, this is actually a lot worse than it sounds. In those 2 seconds, a survivor could regenerate 30 plus stamina and extend chase by another 4 seconds. If the killer takes 2 hits to break the sentry, 8 seconds. Now you know why sentries are targeted first by good players. If you place it badly, a killer could just drive by it and stay on you, losing no progress in chase. But if it's out of the way like this, the killer has to move out of the way to break it, leaving it open for a whole bunch of shenanigans from other characters. Other than that, dispensers are the staple supportive tool that heals survivors. They go down in one hit from everyone, and heal pretty slowly, but it makes up for it in the fact that it can heal multiple people at the same time. I've also been forced to mention from Kaiser that if you go against a Jason, the gashing wound can lock onto the building too. Realistically, you can't parry by placing a building because it takes a second to actually start building. But if you run your chase into a building, you can use it as a body block to take damage for you, limiting their options, lest they use Gashing Wound and lose more time than if they just M1 the building. This is only a last resort tactic. You usually don't want your buildings destroyed because of their long cooldown. Only do this if you have nothing you can do otherwise, or if you're off cooldown by the time it's destroyed. Along with Gashing Wound, you can also use the Sentry to block Walk Speed Override. This is also extremely niche, but Kaiser has me by the throat, so I have to talk about it. Usually situations like this are completely accidental. If you play for something like this to happen, it's almost guaranteed to go wrong. But let's get out of ultra niche scenarios and go to something a little more pressing. 2 or more Buildermen sounds like it would be bad. Less healing, less range on your sentry, but that's where you're wrong. It's actually not as punishing, if not better for your team to go with 2 Buildermen. Having 2 spots on the map to save yourself sounds like paradise, not to mention, if you stack your sentries in one spot, it practically guarantees the Walk of Shame. The only bad part about it is that the sentries need to be closer to the action to be as effective, having roughly 15% less range overall. But now that the recent update forces sentries to take 2 hits through all killers, it isn't as bad as you think. Let's just put this into perspective. This cool kid doesn't want to waste a lot of his limited time clearing sentries when there's a Builderman with no protection. Okay, some protection, just right there, easy to... Okay, we get it! My point being, there's a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of slowness to trudge through, so no matter what, the killer loses in almost all situations if there's 2 Buildermen. This entire plan goes to hell though if one of the Buildermen have no clue what good placement looks like. If you didn't care about the information, you probably skipped ahead using the timestamps in the description to make it here, where I show you some of the examples of well-placed sentries. These sentries all have at least one thing in common. They're either A, difficult to get to, or B, far enough away to break chase to get to them. I say difficult to get to loosely, because obviously it's just a second or 2 of walking. But with limited time, a killer doesn't have time to sit there and let the sentry live, lest they lose more time. I mean, if it's poorly placed, they can straight up ignore it, or worse yet, switch targets to another person altogether, who's far enough away from the sentry that they can just body block the area of protection. As a Builderman, you have to know whether or not survivors frequent certain areas to call it effective. But also bear in mind you can destroy your own sentry to replace it in other spots the killer frequents to keep them in check. Overall, it's a guessing game where you place it, because you could just straight up never have to deal with the killer if you stay in one spot. That's why 2-time players hide in corners, because the killer never wants to go there, because it's so far from other potential hiding spots. The only other thing I can say that would be remotely helpful are the otherwise probably not intentional text that Builderman has. Some of these include, but are not limited to, healing while building. Yeah, you can straight up use a medkit while placing a building. It looks really weird. You can also do a generator while it builds. You know, you can actually do everything while placing a building, except for moving, but that was a given. However, unlike 007 and 7, you can't taunt to cancel it. It just does the taunt while a magic hammer does the work for you. And that's about it. I've taught you all I know about Builderman. Builderman is already an annoying class to deal with, even with the players that don't know what they're doing. Now that you know what you're doing, I'm probably going to get assassinated.
Counter-terrorists win.